All right, hello and welcome everybody. Haven't done anything video-wise for the last week and a half because my dad came to visit, which was actually kind of nice. Didn't get a lot of reading done, didn't get a lot of writing work done, but did get a lot of interesting and important stuff done around the house. He's always good at kind of giving me a kick in the rear end to get stuff like that done. We fixed some lights that were causing problems. We replaced the faucet in my kitchen. Did some car work, all kinds of good stuff. So it was fun, but not a lot of time for reading. But I did have just enough time to read this, which is Magician Master by Raymond Feist. And when I say read, I mean reread, because I've probably read this book 10 times at this point. And I figured this would be fun to do a review on, because I did a review recently of Magician Apprentice, and, I think these are both really good starter books to get you into Raymond Feist's world. He has a lot of different places where you could make entry points. He kind of arranges his books into these sagas, sagas, where each saga is 3 or 4 books, and so you can start at the beginning of any of the sagas, but this was the first. So I already talked about Apprentice. In this review, I'm probably going to spoil a little bit more of Apprentice. So if you haven't read Magician Apprentice and you're thinking about it, I would say cut off here and go read Magician Apprentice before you check out this one. That way you won't be spoiled by anything I'm going to say here. So we'll start with kind of a little plot synopsis, I guess. In the previous book, we got to see a bunch of, plot threads started, but we didn't get to see very many of them finished. And so that's kind of what this book is mostly about, is finishing up those plot threads that were started in the previous book. What kind of things happen? Well, we saw that Pug was captured near the end of the previous book. And, in Magician Apprentice, you might have expected him to go through kind of his hero's journey in that book, but we got very little of that. We got a few hints of this and that here and there, but no real conclusion to that. So in this book, we actually get to see his real hero's journey from kind of, he's basically taken by the Tsuranuanni and enslaved, and we get to see his whole arc through spending his time there, finally getting trained as a magician. He spends a lot of time trying to become Tsuranuanni, which is an important cultural point in the book. But eventually he does find that he needs to return to the kingdom for one reason or other, which I won't spoil, because those are the fun points. But that's we get to see Pug's arc. We get to finally open the mystery box of Thomas's armor. We find out where it's from, who gave it to him, why they gave it to him. We get to see some major changes in Thomas's character. We get to see a very interesting battle of wills between him and who I won't say, but that's also a very interesting point of interesting part of the book. We get to see more politics. We get to see Prince Arutha do a bunch of things to try to deal with this, worsening war on his, in the kingdom that he serves, on his world, right? He makes a visit to Krondor. There's some amazing things that happen there. There's some interesting points about how slow information and rumors move around in the world of Midkemia, right? There's a lot of elements of the story, elements of the plot that are important, that are known in place A, but not known in place B. And in fact, place A has sent kind of not false, but misleading information to place B to make them kind of have the wrong idea. We get introduction of the character Jimmy the Hand, who is important in a lot of the later books. We get a lot of cool intrigue, lots of chase scenes and all that fun stuff. We get to see the push for peace. Now, the war between the kingdom and the Tsuranuanni started in the previous book. In this book, we're going to get to see kind of the conclusion of it, and it does not go exactly the way you would expect. There's some interesting elements of the push for peace between the two worlds. There's some interesting elements that confound it. There's an interesting conclusion that I think most people will find enjoyable and satisfying. And finally, we saw glimpses of the problems with the existing king of the kingdom in the previous book, and we get a nice, actually very interesting tie-up of those results in this book, and they actually consist of most of the book's falling action. They happen very near the end, where kind of the main threads have been tied up, and now we have this last final issue where it's not a high action issue. It's there's a lot of intrigue and plotting and traitors and all this good stuff. And in addition to that, there's some really interesting moments where things are twisted in a way that you might not have expected. And moreover, it makes for excellent world building. It's very, very good. So that's kind of my plot synopsis. Again, very few details, trying not to spoil things, but let's get to kind of like the overall feel of the book. First off, generally speaking, pretty good pacing throughout the book. There are some extended vision sequences that do seem to drag on a bit. If it were me and if I wanted to nitpick at it, what I would probably have done is split them up more, or better vary their intros and outros. Because we get a lot of the things go dark, and then light appears again, and then blah 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 blah. Things go dark, and light appears again. I would have probably tried to maybe hit a different sense each time, or something like that. So and those happen in the between 30% and 50% point markers in the book, somewhere around there. And they're kind of all condensed into this one little area. I probably would try to spread them out a little bit more. But anyway, aside from that chunk where you're going to see these visions and they kind of drag on, the rest of the book is very well paced. There's always something happening. There's always something new being introduced. There's always someone plotting something to try to deal with some problem that they're working on. There's a lot of great action scenes. There's a lot of really good, I would even call them emotional scenes in this book, where just Feist does a really amazing job of portraying characters experiencing the depths of rage, of remorse, of pity, of fear, of insanity. There's some really good portrayals there that really bring this book to life in particular, which is surprising a little bit because of the different groups of characters we're dealing with. They're all very separated in space. As opposed to the previous book, which kind of followed Pug's adventures along as he did these things, and most of the action stayed near him, right? In this book, we've got people in Cride. We've got people in Tsuranuanni, sorry. We've got the Duke Boric's war party, on the other side of the mountains by Cride. We've got Krondor, we've got Rillanan, all of these different places, and all of these different characters who are very widely separated. And Feist does a really good job of moving from one to the other without being jarring, right? But with also being kind of showing there's little bits of connections between them. I'd say it's a very well done setting in that sense, where you can have all these character groups and all these points of view that are widely separated from each other, and yet the whole thing feels very natural and doesn't feel like one is totally separated from the others. We get resolutions of most of the mysteries that were kind of brought up in the first book, which is nice. It's always nice to see not just ends of mystery boxes, but satisfying ends of mystery boxes. And this book does a good job of making each of those mysteries that we were offered in the first book kind of close up in such a way that's oh, this makes sense. And it's oh, this was the plan all along kind of thing. I'd say it's very well done. One thing that we get in this book that we did not get in the previous book is world building in Tsuranuanni, right? So we get a whole bunch of very interesting little, cultural, civilizational, climatological tidbits about the world of the Tsurani, of their history, of the different dangers that they face on that world. And they're all sprinkled carefully throughout the book so that you never feel like you're getting a what would you call it, like a exposition dump. I really enjoy the fact that in the previous book we got a really nice introduction to one world, and in this book Feist has actually managed to kind of hide a very nice introduction to a whole new world in this book without making it obvious that that's what he's doing. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, there are tons of powerful moments that are scattered throughout the book. There's a conversation between Boric, Liam, Martin, and Pug that is not just like powerful, but it's handled in a way that like still gets to me every time I friggin' read it. It's just so good. Because there's a combination of like a person knowing X and a person knows X, Y, and Z, right? And they tell another person X, but then it comes to someone else to tell them Y and Z, and them getting told X first gives them a reaction, and then them getting told Y and Z later gives them a new reaction and a new perspective on X, which is just really, really, really well done in this book. There's just, I mean, it's like two great moments where something gets revealed and then something else gets revealed and then a character reacts and then a character reacts a different way, and like it's not just gripping, but it's also very natural. It's like, no, you can believe that person A just said X and didn't say Y and Z. But then person B comes in, he's like, oh, by the way, not just X, but also Y and Z. And then person C is like, oh wow, that changes my perspective entirely. It's just a really, like, it's probably my favorite scene in the book, honestly. We get Tomas, whatever, right? We get to see the effects that this magical armor has on him, and without revealing too much, it has some very negative effects, and then Feist manages to take those negative effects and then roll them rather smoothly into some positive effects, and I find that part of the book very interesting to see the contrast and to see the way that contrast is rolled over. It's just very smoothly done, very well done, very, very beautifully written. And then finally we have the moment where so Pug is taken as a prisoner of war in the previous book, and in this book he spends 4 years as a slave, only to be found to be basically his magical training gets found out, and the way that is handled as well is extremely like whoa, this stuff is happening here. It's not quite as emotionally gripping as the other two moments, but it still has a lot of weight to it, and I find that part of the book also very, very interesting. As always, the dialogue is good. It can be a little bit like the intros and outros to the dialogue can be a little bit clunky occasionally, but like barely noticeable. There's lots of really good descriptions that are weaved in throughout the book all over the place. You never feel like you're being preached at regarding like you never feel like you're getting an exposition dump. There's a lot of really cool conflicts. There's a lot of really cool characters. There's a lot of really good character interactions with some real nuance and complexity, right? You've got, Pug as a slave makes other slave friends in Tsuranuanni, and then there's the interactions between them and their masters, and it's more complicated than a lot of people would make it out to be, like a lot of writers would make it out to be. Feist manages to make this both sympathetic, interesting, nuanced, and a little surprising at times. Yeah. What I can say is that if you read Magician Apprentice and you liked it at all, you will probably enjoy Magician Master even more. Because not only does it maintain the interesting like character development of the different characters from Apprentice, it adds new characters, it puts new layers on existing characters, and you get to see these characters interact with other characters in very interesting and satisfying ways. You get a lot of really nice action scenes that are not just fun to read, but also like kind of inspiring at times, honestly. There's a point where they have to allergies. There's a point where they have to like do this particular thing. They have to go to this place on a ship, and it's very dangerous. And the characters learn something about themselves as they're in this torrential downpour. There's a lot of moments where characters realize things about themselves, and that's very satisfying as a way to kind of round out their characters. Yeah. So I don't want to drone on forever, but the plot is very interesting. The plot finishes up all the stuff that we were kind of teased in Magician Apprentice. We have good pacing. We have a little bit of dragging bit in the latter part of the first half of the book, where there's a bunch of visions that that are maybe a little bit too condensed. But we have a lot of powerful moments. We have a lot of powerful character interactions. We have a lot of nuance. We have a lot of very interesting world building. And all in all, I'd say that this is a very satisfying book to read. If you enjoyed the first one at all, and you want a little bit more, and you want to see those things, those mysteries solved, you do actually get them in this book for the most part, as opposed to just being teased and drawn on forever and ever. So it's nice to see, a satisfying conclusion to an arc in this sense. And yeah, there's some really good moments in this book that I can list as some of the more memorable things I've ever read, kind of things. That's just my reaction to it. But yeah, I'd say really, really, really good book. Maybe even a little bit better than the first half. And that's because the first half just opened up these, just kind of showed us these mystery boxes, and now we're actually getting satisfied. Not just not just satisfying, but satisfying and reasonable conclusions to these mysteries. And I always like to see that. So yeah, Magician Master. If you enjoyed A Magician Apprentice at all, check this one out, because it does not do what a lot of modern sequels do and keep you hanging. You get the satisfaction of seeing these arcs reach their conclusions, as opposed to, we're gonna do it next time. This is actually a really good conclusion to the first half of the book, which makes sense because they were originally written as one gigantic freaking book, right? So if you hated Magician Apprentice, you might even like this one because all the things, because Magician Apprentice can leave you with a little bit of a bitter taste in your mouth, in the sense that all these question marks are opened up and not solved in the book. And you might be like, well, Feist is going to just keep leading us on. But he doesn't do that. He actually does get a reasonable ending to most of the mysteries that are in the book. There's, of course, a couple of little things that pop up during this book that are not ended in this book as well. But, that's kind of, I think that's the good way to do mystery boxes, is in layers. Like, you open one, and about the time that you're closing this one, you open one here, and then this one goes here, and then this one, you open it up a little bit before, and you kind of have these things layered where there's always something that the reader is looking to find out the answers to next, but the reader does get answers to things, and none of those answers is held out for an extended period of time. Everything gets concluded in a reasonable time frame, but within that time frame, right, there's something new, a new mystery gets popped up that's like, okay, well, I have two mysteries that I'm dealing with now. Okay, mystery one just concluded, but mystery two continues onward and keeps me interested. Anyway, I'll call it here for today for that. Magician Master, definitely worth a read if you liked Magician Apprentice at all. Do not read Magician Master without reading Magician Apprentice. I think that goes without saying. It makes sense that these two books were originally one book. Because, yeah, it's one of those things where, and this is like Star Wars, right? Star Wars had an ending, right? Just the first movie. And then they were like, oh, let's make more. So this is one of those things where this was Feist's first, novel, and so he wrote it in the with the feeling that, hey, here's an ending, here's a real ending for you, as opposed to we're gonna continue this next time kind of thing. Let's see what's next on the agenda for me. One thing that I did do while my dad was here was I watched because he's a big fan of Star Trek: The Original Series, and I actually picked it all up on Blu-ray the other day. not the other day, but several months ago, and I hadn't actually sat down and watched any of it. I'd just been too busy. But when we weren't doing work on the house, what we were typically doing was just binge watching old Star Trek episodes. And so I have the privilege of having watched a bunch of these Star Trek episodes with the understanding of what came afterwards, but without too much nostalgia for the original. And so I'm going to have some kind of mixed thoughts about that. I'm kind of working to put those together at this point. But yeah, I mean, it's certainly an important TV series, right? It's one of the earliest, might be the earliest like space opera television series that became really. Certainly, it's the first one that became really popular. More popular than a lot of people expected, right? But yeah, at the same time, watching episode after episode after episode, you start to see some things get a little bit repetitive, and you do get to see some things that are kind of like, well, we're just doing this again, aren't we? So I'll talk a little bit about that maybe in the next video. But for now, that's what I got. As always, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you like what I'm doing and you want to help the channel, you know what to do. And yeah, have a good week, and I will see you next time.